So I'm going to go ahead and start recording and share my screen with my PowerPoint. Okay, my name is Elaine Hayes, and I've been working for the Laramie County Library for 21 years. And the class today is going to be Hispanic genealogy, or finding your Hispanic Latino ancestors in U.S. records. And I'm mostly going to concentrate on U.S. records. We will talk a little bit about records from Mexico and South America and other countries, Spain a little bit too, but mostly we're gonna do all our research in the United States first before we move elsewhere. I will ask for questions at the end. So if you have questions, you can unmute yourself and just ask a question in the middle. That's fine too. Since I only have one person watching at the moment. How do you start searching for your ancestors? This is the same no matter who your family is or where they're from. You need to talk to your family, record what you already know about your family or what your relatives know, get down names and dates, of course, but also places where people lived, family stories, things like that. Try to get as much firsthand information as possible. Look for sources that might be already in your home or in the home of a relative, such as vital records, birth, marriage, and death records, things like that. That'll tell you a lot about your family. You may not be able to get originals of those, but you can make photocopies or take a picture with your cell phone or something and have that information with you. It's always a good idea to sort of start with yourself and work backwards in time. You know all the information about yourself, information probably about your parents, and you may know information about your grandparents. And then you get back far enough that you can maybe find records that are easily available on the internet. And try to look for records from all sources, not just on the internet. There could be some records that are just published in books or in print, or actually still at those county courthouses or archives in other countries and things like that. So wherever you can find that information is good. A good place to start is the U.S. Census and vital records such as birth, marriage, and death records. And like I mentioned before, try to find all the information, all the data you can in the United States before you try to find information from a country of origin. You will start to accumulate a whole lot of papers and information, and there are a lot of different ways that you can keep track of all this. You can make photocopies or prints and have paper forms and use notebooks and filing cabinets to keep track of everything. You can have genealogy software that you actually have on your own home computer that's not shared with anybody else, but it's a good way to keep track of all your information digitally. Or you can have a family tree that's on a private or shared database. A private or shared family tree that's on a public database such as Ancestry.com or FamilySearch.org. And we'll talk a little bit more about those. And there are other databases that have ways for you to enter and keep your family trees there for free if you want to, even if it's a paid database such as Ancestry.com. You can get paper forms in the library. We have a stack of them that you can take 3 or 4 and make photocopies if you need more, or you can print them at some of these websites. And this is all in your handout, by the way. I try to make sure that anything that I bring up here will be in your handout somewhere, at least the websites. You can get that software that lives on your own computer at places like Legacy Family Tree or Family Tree Builder, Roots Magic. There are other names. I know the Gramps Project is another one, but they all seem to have a free version that you can download for free and kind of try it out, see if you like it. And then usually you'll want to upgrade to a paid version. And those are between $25, maybe $50 for that software. And it's all software usually you get from these websites and download. This is what a family tree, this is my family tree from Ancestry.com. And actually up the upper right-hand corner, you can say it says E. Hayes 116, that's me. I've kind of moved my living people off the corner to the left, but you can see some of my, great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents and a little bit farther back. You'll see the little green leaves. Those, I have a paid Ancestry.com subscription, and they give me the hints are the little green leaves on my tree. But that's kind of what that looks like. And we'll see later what it looks like on FamilySearch. And even though it does cost some money to have an Ancestry.com subscription, you can put a family tree on here for free. Usually how you go about that is you have a free like 2-week subscription or something like that. And you make sure you cancel it before the end of your 2 weeks so that they don't charge a credit card, but then you can still, you still have that account and you can still keep working on your tree, but you just can't do the searching and things like that, but the tree will still be there. These are the countries we're talking about. Mexico, Central and South America, islands of the Caribbean, the countries that were settled by Spain, and they speak Spanish, except for Brazil, who speaks Portuguese, but Hispanic, means speaking Spanish, and Latino is from, or Latinx is all the Latin American countries, including those that speak Portuguese. If you look, this is statistics from 2010 on the chart, and it has over 50 million Hispanics, with Mexicans, the largest group. It actually now the total Hispanic population exceeds 53 million, but that gives you an idea of countries we're talking about. There's a common history of colonization in the Americas, of course. No one is really native here unless they're Native Americans. But in the 15th century, Spanish explorers discovered what is today Cuba and the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And then further on, there were Spanish settlements in Florida, New Mexico, and California in the US. And of course, the conquistadors claimed treasure for the Spanish crown and brought Catholic missionaries to North and South America. And the Catholic missionaries, converted the native population wherever they could, and also the colonists from Spain and elsewhere in Europe would intermarry with the native populations. So no matter where your ancestors might come from, they do kind of have that same history of colonization. This is kind of shows you how the territory of the United States grew after the Mexican-American War. All of that area up to Oregon, Idaho border, over into Texas was part of Mexico at one time. So it's quite possible that if your family is Mexican, they may have never crossed the border. The border might have crossed them, that they may have always lived in the Southwest United States. This is just a little history of Latino American immigration history. Of course, 1521, we have Cortez destroying the Aztec city of, I didn't think about saying this aloud. So, but the Cortez did destroy several Aztec cities and civilizations in Mexico. In the 1840s, there was the Texas annexation and the Mexican secession. The Mexican Revolution caused quite a bit of immigration into the southwestern US. In the 1920s, they started limiting the number of immigrants allowed to enter the US each year. From 1942 to 1964, there was actually a farm labor supply program that brought 350,000 migrants, Mexican migrants, into the U.S. each year, and it was encouraged to bring them back and forth for the labor supply. 1954 to 1958, the U.S. government started deporting undocumented Mexican workers, and they also accidentally or on purpose, I'm not sure, deported thousands of U.S. citizens that had Mexican heritage that were also arrested and detained. So that's kind of a shameful, one of the many shameful history of immigration. 1952, we have, 1959 and after, there's a lot of Cubans migrating to the U.S. after Fidel Castro and communism. And as of 2012, the Hispanic population was 53 million. It could be more now because that's almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And there's a lot more, I just kind of hit the highlights there of history. The reasons for immigration into the US are the same for anybody from wherever they're coming from. There are push factors and pull factors. The push factors is what's pushing you out of the other country, and the pull factors is kind of what's pulling you to that particular country that you're immigrating to. So, push factors are things like economic factors, lack of jobs or poverty, even environmental factors like famine or drought, pollution, also political factors, war, discrimination, persecution. These are usually, they're bad, really bad things that make it so you don't want to stay in that country. Pull factors are things like, job opportunities, education, marriage, maybe, if you've got somebody that you want to marry that's already in another country. Land, in the past, there have been free land offered to immigrants. Political factors like democracy, capitalism, freedom. Social factors, chain migration is just, part of your family is already in a certain country and you want to follow them. And all of these happen to every ethnic group, everybody that immigrates into the United States. This says requirements to jump into records of the country of origin. These are things that are really nice to have. You really need to have the full name of your ancestor. It's a good idea to know where they came from or approximate birth dates, birth, marriage, or death date, something like that happened in the country of origin. It's also helpful if you know their parents' names, their spouses' names, their children's names. Often we may not know their parents' names, but we do know the children's names because that's closer to our generation. So anything you might know about that person is helpful. And doing all your research as far back as you can in the US will give you all those clues that you need, hopefully, to go into the country of origin. And I'll show you that when we do the example that I have coming up. Sources that might tell you that place of origin, if you don't know where they exactly came from, birth, marriage, or death certificates usually will have a place of birth. So any kind of those vital records may have them. Obituaries or cemetery burial records. Obituaries are usually really good for a lot of information about the family and where they came from. Any kind of journals, diaries, letters, family history, family lore that you might tell you what part of the, a certain country they came from. Photographs. Sometimes you can glean information from photographs. Family Bibles or other family history information that you might have already been worked on in the family. Immigration, naturalization, or citizenship papers, of course, are going to tell you that. Military records will also give you a lot of good information. And there are other sources too, but places, these are kind of the top hits of where you're going to find information about where your ancestor came from. These websites are kind of what we're going to talk about today. Ancestry.com, which is the paid Ancestry subscription that you have at home. Ancestry Library Edition is the library's version of Ancestry.com that the Laramie County Library and other public libraries have. Generally, you just can search that at the library, but now until December 31st this year, because of COVID and so many libraries being closed, you can actually search Ancestry Library Edition at home with your library card number and PIN. And FamilySearch.org is the family history website of the LDS or the Mormon Church, and they are very interested in genealogy. They have the largest genealogical library in the world in Salt Lake City, and they're a good source of all sorts of records, including naturalization records. If you've got a more recent immigrant, and maybe you're not finding records in Ancestry or anything, you may need to contact the U.S. National Archives or the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service for records that are held there. Also, a more recent immigrant, you're more likely to find that sort of immigration information in that person's home or the home of a relative too. Spanish surnames can be a little bit confusing sometimes, and this is actually a very complicated subject. What I'm going to give you as an example is just the traditional way to do it. Obviously, people can create their name or any way they want, but for example, the famous author Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Garcia is his father's family name, and Marquez is his mother's father's family name. Sometimes people hyphenate it or they reverse them, especially if they come to the United States. If he immigrated to the United States, he could say, well, I don't want people thinking my last name is Marquez. I want to think it's Garcia. So he could reverse that. Women's surnames. So traditionally, if Maria Padilla Falto marries Manuel Perez Quinones, she becomes Maria Padilla Perez. And their child or children would be a Perez Padilla. So, and it varies by what country we're talking about. And of course, people in the United States don't traditionally do this anymore, but you will see this come up, and it's actually a wonderful hint because they're telling you right in their name what their mother's maiden name was. So it's a great hint if you see names like that. Knowing your history of both the United States, wherever they lived in the United States, and the place they came from will give you some hints about when they might have immigrated, why they immigrated, things like that. It also puts their life in context and makes it more interesting, to figure out what their life was like at that time. Okay, and I talked about these a little bit already, but the good places to start looking for your genealogy information, I always recommend people go to Ancestry Library Edition because it's free. You know, you can search it at the library or now online. Also, through the library, you can search Heritage Quest, which is also a very good genealogy website. The FamilySearch website has a lot of good information in it, and it is totally free all the time. You do have to, and that's the one through the LDS or the Mormon Church. You do have to create an account, but it's totally free, and you know, creating an account is easy. You just have to choose a username and password. Find a Grave is become a wonderful website. It has the largest amount of grave sites, and there people have also added information, not only pictures of the headstone, but in family information, obituaries, things like that. You can find at findagrave.com. The U.S. National Archives, or archives.gov, is the original archives for anything that's federal. So immigration, naturalization information, military information, the census, all that stuff is originally stored at the National Archives. And there are regional archives, such as the one for the mountain region is in Broomfield, Colorado, so not that far away from us. And you also may need to contact county or state archives, Catholic Church Diocese Office to find church records, you know, places like that. Usually getting that kind of information is not free, but it's definitely worth it if you can find original information that way. This is just telling you how to get to our genealogy resources at Laramie County Library System at home. You can go to our website, which is www.lclsonline.org. Click on the library catalog, then click on databases. There's some databases A to Z, so you could go A for Ancestry, or you could look down on the subject list, and there's a genealogy subjects. You can click on that, and you will see not only Ancestry Library Edition, but also Heritage Quest and some other things too. If you're at home, you'll need to enter your library card number, and just the number part of it, no letters, no spaces, and your PIN. If you've had your library card for a long time, your default PIN is probably WYLD, W-Y-L-D. If it's newer, like in the last couple of years, it's probably READ, R-E-A-D. If you try both of those and neither one works, call up the library and we'll look it up and tell you what your PIN is. As I've mentioned before, the library version of Ancestry.com has free access in the library. Subscription is required for you if you're going to have Ancestry.com at home. And Ancestry Library Edition is available as sort of a special deal for you to use at home until December 31st, 2021. And that was just because all those libraries were closed, and you know, they were still paying their subscription to Ancestry, so it was the way to offer that for their clients at home. This is just the way you'd get there, and I'll go through this because I explained it already, but you click on the library catalog, which is circled in red there, and then you get to our library catalog. Oh, I don't know why I've circled Novelist Plus. It should be over on databases. I'll have to fix that. But you click on databases. Novelist Plus is a great way to find out what to read next, but databases are where we want to go. Down below, we have genealogy. I circled that. Click on that, and you will get to Ancestry Library or Heritage Quest. And there's some other things, like I said, News Vault, African American Heritage, ProQuest newspapers, Sanborn maps, and Wyoming newspapers, which is really helpful if you have Wyoming ancestors. This is what Ancestry Library Edition looks like. And I kind of have a red arrow that's pointing to where it says Laramie County Library. So you know that you're on, Ancestry Library Edition and not on my account, for instance. Under search, you can search for things. You can also click on that green button in the middle that says begin searching, or go straight to search census or whatever. But I like to look under the search and kind of see what's under there. I also did a search in the card catalog. It's kind of cut off, but it does say card catalog there above. But I just wanted to know what they had for Mexico. So I put in Mexico and I rearranged it by record count. But we have Mexico select baptisms 1560 to 1950 in Spanish, and there's 110 million names there. So, or 110 million records. So there's quite a bit of things there. Yeah, that's million. But there are 142 different databases, and you'll see that they include information in Mexico, information, border crossings from Mexico to the US, marriages, church records, things like that. And it goes on. Those are the ones, the sort of the largest databases about Mexico. And even if they're in Spanish, remember, you only need to know some, be able to read a few words, and what you're looking for is names, of course, names and dates, which are nice, easy to read, even if you don't speak Spanish. I also looked for I was looking for areas and looked for stuff in South America, and I found other records from South America. Down below, you can pick a particular place if you want to go to Bolivia or Argentina and see what's available. Back to looking at Mexico again, I was just highlighting that the US border crossings from Mexico to US, this is just stuff under immigration and travel category. There's also US Naturalization Records Index from 1794 to 1995. I would suspect that a lot of that newer stuff, there's only a little bit. It's probably focused more on records that are older, just because of privacy restrictions. Okay, finally, we get to the example that I was going to show you. I'm looking for Antonio Guerrero, and I know only a little bit about him. I knew he lived in California, but I'm not sure about the birth date. I knew he was from Mexico and lived in California. I know his children's names. I know his wife's name. So since I know a little bit more, under show more options, I can open that up. And I can put in, well, one thing I do know is I know exactly where he lived in Pasadena, California, not just California. And I entered a child's name below of Maria. Common name, Antonio Guerrero, child name Maria. I'm sure there's a lot of them, and probably a lot that lived in Los Angeles area too. So, but it's a help. I can work with that. I've got, these are the top matches or the best matches of 126,786, and it's probably getting down to the point of anyone with named Antonio, anyone named Guerrero, anyone maybe Antonio that has something to do with a Maria. So there's a lot, but the top matches should be pretty good. That 1940 census looks like the right guy, because we have Antonio Guerrero, birth in Mexico, 1940 census. He lived in Pasadena, and census is done every 10 years. Well, the next slide is going to tell you that, but I'm going to look at that. Just a little bit about the census. In the US, the census has been taken every 10 years from 1790 through 2020. The 1790 through 1940 censuses are available for the genealogist to search. There's a 72-year privacy rule, which is why you can't look at 1950 or 1960 yet. But the 1950 census will be available in April of 2022, which is less than a year away. So that's pretty soon, you know, if you're waiting to see something that happened in 1950. So more about the census. From 1790 through 1830, they kind of only have the name of the head of the household, which is usually the father of the household, plus sort of a count of other people that living in the home. They would have ages and sex, so males of different ages, females of different ages, and sort of hash marks or counting of people in different categories. So hard unless you know the name of the head of the household. From 1840 to 1940, the census includes every person by name, and they didn't have to be a citizen. The idea was to count every person living in the United States. So it should include your ancestors if they were in the United States at that time period. We had 1890 census that was destroyed by fire, but the 1900 and 1930 censuses also give you more information like birthplaces of every person. Now we want to start with ourselves and work backwards in time. So we're going to start with the 1940 census, which is why I chose to look at the 1940 census for Antonio Guerrero. And if we look at that, we say, okay, he's the respondent, which means that he's the person that answered the question. So he's 50 years old, which means that he would be born in about 1890. Male, they have race white, birthplace Mexico, he's married, he's the head of the household, he lives in Pasadena. His street is Avocado Avenue, the house number is 434. So we know that they live at 434 Avocado Avenue, if this is the right people, in Pasadena. We have an occupation down below. Oh, citizenship says alien. Occupation down below is a grape picker, and the house is owned. They own their own home. I've also circled suggested records. Always look at those suggested records because these are the ones that Ancestry thinks are the same person that's in that record that you're looking at right now. So there's a 1930 census. We have a baptism in Mexico. We have a California death index. All sorts of great things that we need to make sure we come back and look at. Where it says send your find home, that means that you can email it to someone else. Oh. I just noticed that I might have lost Mary and I readmitted her. Mary, if you're hearing me now, this will be recorded, okay? I know you might have missed something, but we recorded it. Hi, Mary. We might have lost you for a little bit, but I just wanted to let you know that we're going to record this, and I will send you the recording in case you missed too much, okay?
Okay, yeah, I don't know what happened. It's my computer shut itself down, and yes, but thank you.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry if you missed something, but I will, I'll send you the link to the recording. This is my example. I don't know how much you missed, but this is the 1940 census record for Antonio Guerrero. And if you look through there, we can find out a lot about him. We can find out his age. He's 50. He was born about 1890 in Mexico. He's married. He's living at 434 Avocado Avenue in Pasadena, California. He's an alien, so he's not naturalized. He's a great picker, and the red box is circling suggested records, and these are good things to look at for Ancestry, because Ancestry thinks that those other records are the same person that is in this record. So we're going to go look farther down on the page of the same record. Oh, there's a lot of them, including, a baptism in Mexico, Catholic Church records in Mexico, World War II draft registration cards, all sorts of good things that Ancestry thinks has something to do with this same person. If we look below, in addition, we can see that the Guerreros own their own home. He has been to elementary school up to the 4th grade. He's a wage worker. We have Antonio, his wife, Genoveva. We have Maria, kids, Maria, Carmen, Juana, and Daniel. You might notice that there's some gaps. Maria is 27 and Carmen is 20. And I would say that there's some missing kids in there that are in their 20s. So keep that in mind, that they may have more kids than that. But kids in their 20s could be married, they could be living elsewhere, things like that. But we'll keep that. We're going to go back and look at the original record. This is what a census record looks like. This is the 1940 census. And in the middle of the page, which is kind of green and highlighted in yellow, is Antonio Guerrero. The little circle with the X means that he actually is the person that answered the questions when the census taker came around. And they basically just went down the street. So people that are before and after are their neighbors. And you might actually notice that there's a Guerrero living next door. So that's something we should look at as very likely part of the family, maybe. We have all his kids. We have, they ask the question, male or female, race, age, married or single, where they were born, and that Antonio, his wife, and the oldest child were all born in Mexico, but the younger 3 children were born in California. So I would guess that they maybe came to the United States somewhere between when Maria was born and when Carmen was born. So that gives you an idea of when they came. The next question over, they ask where you lived in 1935, which is a question that was only asked in the 1940 census because of the Depression and a lot of people moving around, but they lived in the same house in 1935. If you look over, we see that Antonio is a great picker. Some of the kids are working too. I see one says servant, one says seamstress, but it gives you an idea of their occupation. So one of the girls is probably working as a maid with a private family. But I think that the really important thing is we've got people's ages, an idea of when they were born, and we also have an idea of maybe when they came to the United States based on where the kids were born. And also, let's look at the Francisco Guerrero and the people below. Actually, oh, I must have took out that slide, but I actually think that the people below are more of his kids, because Francisco Guerrero, that are the next household, he's only 22, and the 2 people living with him are his brothers. And that was my theory, and it proved to be correct. Actually, they are also at 434 Avocado, but it says 434 in the back or something like that. So they've got an outbuilding or another house on that same piece of property where some of the kids are living, which is kind of cool, because the houses are probably pretty small. And you'll see later why I say that, because most people even take a look at the house. 1940, they asked supplementary questions of 2 people on each page. And it happened to be that daughter Carmen is one of the people that was asked a supplementary question. So at the bottom, we have Carmen Guerrero, and she was born in Mexico. They ask you what language you speak, and it says Mexican. Probably should say Spanish, but it said Mexican. She's the seamstress, and they asked some other questions. The questions they asked were things like, they do ask for a birthplace of you and your father. So that's why it says, she was born in Mexico, and so was her father. If you look at other people on the page, most of the folks on the page do speak Spanish, and a lot of them, at least the adults, were born in Mexico. They ask, for military service and things like that, if you had a social security number, where you've worked and things, and a lot of those questions weren't actually answered because she's a girl. So they didn't ask about military service and things like that. Okay, so we're going back in time, and I've so looking at one of those suggested records from before was the 1930 census. So we're looking for Antonio Guerrero, the same family, in 1930 census. And okay, he was about 50 in 1940. And in 1930 census, it says 39, but it, close enough to 40, that's still the same. They're living in Pasadena on 434 North Avocado, so the same place. They own that house. It's one of the questions asked. Age at first marriage is asked, 18. Birthplace, and his father and mother's birthdays, which is Mexico. Also notice there's still some suggested records that we definitely don't want to lose track of. We want to make sure we go back and check. We have an immigration year here too of 1916, and father and mother's birthplace. So age at first marriage is going to give you an idea of when he got married. His occupation now says a ditch digger for the gas company. It was a great picker before, but Antonio is 39. His wife, Genevieva, is 37. And here we've got more kids. We had Maria, Francisco, Carmen, but we also here have Jose, which is the older son, but he was probably married and moved away in the previous census because it's 10 years later. Juana, Antonio, and Luisa. So we've got several more kids that we didn't see in the other census. And a whole bunch of cool suggested records that we need to look at. This is what the actual scan of the 1930 census looks like. And you can pretty much read it. We have Antonio and all the, it always starts with the head of the household. So Antonio, his wife, and the kids from the oldest to the youngest. One of them is only 1 year old, I believe, the youngest at this point. And they were all born in Mexico until we have Francisco, which I think says Arizona. So that gives you an idea. And then the rest of the kids are born in California. As maybe how they moved through the United States, maybe came in through Texas, Arizona, and then to California. So that gives you some idea of what time period they were in Arizona. That first child was born in the US is Francisco, and he's 12 in 1930. So arrival in the US for the family is between 1913 and to 1918. We already saw something where he said in the previous census that they came in 1916. So this all is starting to make sense. Okay, so we're looking at some of the other one. We have Antonio Guerrero, Father Francisco, Mother Antonio Ortiz, spouse Genevieve Munoz. So we're finding kind of more names. We've got his mother's maiden name and his wife's maiden name here. And that first child, Jose Guerrero, is listed here too. It's hard to tell that this is the same person, although fortunately, Genevieve may be a little bit more unusual name, and it seems to fit. You know, they named one of their father is, the mother of Antonio is Antonia, and the father is Francisco, and they named one of their children Francisco too, which is something that you might do if your father was named Francisco. So it's all sort of making sense. This is Antonio O. Guerrero's, O maybe for Ortiz, Guerrero. Death index, this is the Social Security death index. So that second number is actually his Social Security number. He's male, he died, he was born the 13th of June, 1889. We had a guess that he was born around 1890, so 1889, pretty close. In Mexico, death date we have of the 7th of March, 1983 in Los Angeles. Still, we got him. It makes sense. They're in the perfect place. And at the bottom, we have mother's maiden name of Ortiz, which agrees with the last record that we looked at. So we're actually finding a lot of information about him. This is a World War II registration card, military registration card for the son, Antonio. Antonio Sr. is probably a little bit old at this time, but and Antonio, and we have Munoz, which is his mother's maiden name, right? We saw in another one. And that they live at 434 Avocado Avenue, which is what we saw on the census. We have Antonio Guerrero down below listed as his father. He lives at the same place. And employer is a shoe repair shop. So, and we have his signature, which is the son's signature down below. So far it's all making sense. We've figured out mother and wife's maiden name, and it's making sense with the records that we found. Okay, so this is from Zacatecas, Mexico, a civil registration for their marriage for Antonio and Genevieve Munoz marriage. And we have again his father and mother's name, Francisco Guerrero and Antonia Ortiz. So we have figured out a lot of information and given us a lot of information. So if we're looking for in Valparaiso, Zacatecas, Mexico, we are going to find things like their marriage registration and other information about the family. So this is a draft registration card for Antonio Sr. He's 52 years old, but they still wanted him to register for the draft. So Antonio Ortiz Guerrero at 435 North Avocado in Pasadena. We have his birth date there again. It's the same as we've seen before. And we actually have his signature, which is really cool to have if that's your ancestor. Okay, this is the Social Security Death Index, which I think we've seen before, so sorry, that's a repeat, but more confirmation of his of the information we've already found out. This is the city directory. City directories are also usually called a crisscross directory, because you can look up the person by name. You can also look them up by address. You know, if you just want to know who lives at a certain place. This is from 1929. And in 1929, we have Antonio Guerrero and Genevieve living at 420 Avocado Avenue. It was 434 before. I don't know if they just moved down the street or if they renumbered the place. But probably they're still living in close to or the same place. And lab means laborer. He is listed as a laborer back in 1929. The city directories are really good for the in-between years between the census, since it's every 10 years. This is 1929, so it's very close to 1930. But you know, you can also find city directories for 1924 and 1925 and things like that to help fill in the gaps. This is a U.S. border crossing. And remember before, I was thinking we figured out that they probably came between, from 1915 to 1919. This is one from 1919, although I believe he said that they came in 1916, but he could have been going back and forth as a laborer or, you know, migrant or something. I think when I look at this, I don't see that the rest of the family's here, it's just him. But we have an arrival date of 3rd of November, 1919 in Laredo, Texas. Might be him, might not be him. It's a little hard to tell. And this is kind of what they look like. And this is from the U.S. Department of Labor. So that's, which is another thing that makes me think that this is maybe a migrant laborer crossing. Don't forget about all those non-computer resources. Our library has over 25,000 genealogy books, journals, and microforms, and a lot of things are not available on the internet, but they could be in books. Sometimes, of course, you'll need to go get those original vital records from the source. Some of them are held back to just immediate family because of privacy rules and things like that. You know, they're worried about identity theft, so they want to make sure that you have a legitimate reason for wanting that information. That's why you have to go to the county courthouse or vital records, state vital records office. Don't forget just trying to Google it, because you may find information on the internet about your family. There may be other people that are searching that same family, or you can find information like information about the house, the area, the place that they worked, things like that, school they went to, anything to help kind of flesh out the story of your family. But beware of incorrect information. As we all know, there's a lot of incorrect information on the internet. And sometimes it's not on purpose. It's just people that are doing genealogy that maybe aren't real careful. And so they adopt something and kind of put together people that maybe shouldn't go together, or so they might not be very good genealogists. So check their references. See if it makes sense. See if it seems like it's right. I guess doing your own work sometimes helps, but be wary of that. Use other people's information to give you clues, to help you out, but don't just accept it without double checking. One thing you can do is, since 434 Avocado Avenue in Pasadena, California kept coming up in all those records, I thought, well, let's see if that place still exists and if I can look it up. And I did that. I just Googled it, 434 Avocado Avenue, Pasadena, California, and I get a Google Street View. And it looks like this, you know, and this is one of the reasons why I said, oh, those houses are pretty small. They are. They're kind of 2-bedroom, 1-bath sort of homes. This is the area that they gave me for 401 to 525 Avocado Avenue. There wasn't exactly something that was 434, and it could be because it was on the other street. And the other side of the street looks like this now. So it probably didn't look like that in 1940. But give you an idea. This is, you know, there's Zillow and Realtor.com and places like that, and they'll usually have the pictures of houses that aren't even for sale right now. But this gives you an idea of, this says that this house was built in 1965. So, you know, my thought that maybe these homes were not exactly the same home as they lived in 1940 is probably correct. But it gives you an idea of what they might look like. Seems like the blue house looks newer than the green house on the left, but this is, I'm getting close to the end, but this is what you can find on FamilySearch.org, which is the LDS or the Mormon Church's family history website. Remember, you need to sign in or create an account if you don't have one yet. And it's FamilySearch.org, and you can just easily create an account and get started. This is my account, and it keeps track of my family tree, and it'll give me little hints just like Ancestry does. And you know, I can add pictures and sources and things like that, just like I can on Ancestry, but for free. So, and that's what my family tree looks like, you know, on FamilySearch.org. There's a search page, and you can search for historical records. They have about 80–90% of their collection in Salt Lake City has been digitized and is full text on their website. So, which is a lot of great information. So you can enter information and search. You can search by and it's for the whole world. They've gone all over the world collecting records. This is, I just kind of opened up the area of Caribbean, Central and South America just to see what was available. So lots of information there, lots of records and images of a lot of information. Some of this is not on Ancestry, so always good to look here. And this is just what's available for Mexico. Okay, trying to find the same good guy again. I put in Antonio Guerrero. I put in, he was born in Mexico. Kind of forgot exactly when he was born, so I put in a range, 1888 to 1901, sort of a general range. I know that his spouse was named Genevieve, and I found quite a few records for him too. We have, the first one is the 1940 census and the 1930 census, same ones we saw before. There's some baptisms in Mexico. And basically, I think these are their 3 children that were born in Mexico, their baptism information, and some other stuff here. We see sort of the same kind of text information from the 1940 census. And we can also look at this, another screenshot of the census, the full text census, and copy that, and if we wanted to, but you've already seen it. So I went on to the Mexico baptisms, and I circled how you could attach this information to your family tree in FamilySearch, or add it to your source box in FamilySearch. Share it means like to email the information to someone else, but you can also download it, copy or print, save it, on a flash drive and things like that. So we have Jose Guerrero, which is their oldest son, and a christening date of 19th of March, 1909. Birth date of 14th of March, 1909. And we have grandfather, grandmother's names down here. So we have even more than we found out before. Francisco Guerrero, Antonia Ortiz, Sebastian Munoz, which is the first time we've heard that name, Sebastian, and Juana Warjan. And all sorts of good information. We've gone back a couple of generations now in Mexico. So that's the kind of information that you can find on Ancestry, FamilySearch, Heritage Quest, and stuff like that, to and keep track of all that information and find out more about your family, and then keep going back farther, and give you information that if you were to visit that part of Mexico where they lived, that you could have that information to help you find records that might still be in a county courthouse or archives in Mexico. The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service has some information, and they do have a genealogy service that costs some money, but they will help you out finding some of those records if you're having some problems finding a naturalization record or immigration records. So things that they can get for you, naturalization certificate during those time periods, alien registration forms, visa files, registry files, or A files, which could be alien files, I'm not sure. Oh, that's during and right after World War II. So yeah, kind of alien registration files. And so they do have some help at the USCIS. I'm not really talking about genealogy research in Spain because I know I'm going over time a little bit, so sorry about that. But oh, I guess I'm not. It's only right after 4. Okay. Not going to talk about genealogy research in Spain because it's basically the same as research in any European country. But here's some resources. There's a World Gen Web for Spain that should give you some local information, like where are the archives, where are the cemeteries, maybe links to actual information. There's Spanish Genealogy Association, which in the United States. The Archives of Spain, so like the National Archives of the United States, but this is the Spanish Archives. Always remember that if you're having trouble with translation, Google Translate can really help. Sometimes they come up with not great translations, but at least get you an idea of figuring out what they're saying. DNA genealogy is good to do, and these are just some examples of some Latino Americans. One thing that you won't really get from genetic testings that they're not going to tell you is whether you're Latino or Hispanic. And that's because people from Latin America are a mix of European, African, and Native American ancestry. And it's so knowing your history of where you came from will give you more of an idea. In this case, this person knew that they were from, well, knew they were from Mexico, but it's, oh no, they're Puerto Rican, sorry. The first one over, Ann Morales, is Puerto Rican. And so she has Native American from Puerto Rico. And there's also Spain, Iberian Peninsula, so Spain, Portuguese, Italian, Ashkenazi Jewish, Scandinavian, Sardinian. But that's kind of information from 23andMe. The other picture over here from Mexico was a different person, but for some reason I couldn't put that, but who is from Mexico. It's from approximately from Zacatecas, Mexico. And this, she had her ancestry DNA, which said Native American from that area of Mexico, and had, I think, some Iberian Peninsula in Spain, and also some European and some African ancestry all mixed up. So that's kind of, you'll see a lot of Native American ancestry in most Latinos. It says, let's see, on average, and you might also see Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry, which all came from the Spanish Inquisition and the fact that it happened in New Spain too, but people with Jewish ancestry were forced to convert and then married, you know, Catholics, but your DNA doesn't lie. And there may be some Jewish ancestry in there too. On average, researchers estimate that Latinos in the US carry about 18% of Native American ancestry, 65% European ancestry, and a 6.2% African ancestry. But that's just an average. There's a lot of different kinds of indigenous cultures in Mexico and South America. This just kind of shows you all those indigenous languages in Mexico, and there's a lot of different ones. So there's a lot of possible varieties. Okay, I kind of ran out of slides and time a little bit, but remember that we have these 25,000 plus genealogy books. I have in your handouts a bibliography and a webography, good websites that might be good for you to look at. Also books specific to Latino ancestry that you might want to come and look at. And the library is open. The special collections, the genealogy room is open anytime the library's open. Library's open 10 to 9 Monday through Thursday, 10 to 6 on Friday, and 1 to 5 on Saturdays. I do have volunteers back in the library. Masks are optional, that we don't have any COVID restrictions at this time. But I do have volunteers that are in the library to help you. If there's no volunteer present, please come up to the 3rd floor Ask Your Desk and ask us, and we will come in and at least get you started on the computers, you know, finding books and things like that, and getting you those handouts, those ancestry forms and family group sheets and other handouts to keep track of your genealogy. Okay, I hope that I answered some of your questions. As I said, this is going to be recorded if you want to come back and listen to it again. And Mary, if you've got any questions, you can ask them and I will try to answer.
Okay, well, you've been very thorough. I've really appreciate all this information. This really gives me a really good place to, well, to start. And yeah.
Yeah, and if you'd like to email me, I didn't include my email, I should have, but it might be on one of my handouts, but if not, well, actually I sent you an email, so you've got it.
I do have it, yes.
If you have a question, send me an email, and and I'll, like I said, try to answer it. If you would like some like one-on-one assistance, we can maybe make an appointment. So yeah, bring in your genealogy and we'll try to help you out.
Well, thank you so much, Elaine. You know, I really appreciate this. I'm really excited to get, you know, go further in this. So
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.